welcome back, everybody. It is a Sunday afternoon, April the 7th, 2024. Welcome back to the Seahawk Boys Fearless and Stupid YouTube podcast. Well, it's not really stupid. It's actually the smartest Seahawks podcast on the entire internet, especially when you consider that my competition is people like Seahawks Retard Nelson and Dan Veens over at Seahawks Forever. Dan Veens, by the way, if your personality was hooked up to one of those EKG machines, it would be a straight line. You have zero personality and even less football knowledge. So here we are, guys. We're stuck in a situation where one thing after another keeps pointing to what the Seahawks need to do, and the Seahawks keep ignoring it, or at least in public, they appear to be ignoring it. Fully supported for the most part by the Seahawks blogosphere and vlogosphere, except for maybe Rob Staten, who is, like I said, the only guy with any real brains out there in Seahawks land. Hawk bloggers, a dumbass. These guys are they go in lockstep with what the Seahawks media says is the situation with the team. The reality is, guys, I'm the only one out here who's going to tell you the truth. I'm the only one who's telling you what this team's real needs are. We're going to go over those today fairly briefly. We're going to look at the last couple of drafts for the Seahawks, which some people seem to think are so great. I think they're mediocre, average. And we're going to talk about what they need to do in this particular draft cycle coming up in about 3 weeks, less than a month. So thanks for being here. And we'll be right back to get started. Okay, thanks for being here. All right, look, the first thing we have to do in order to evaluate where the Seahawks are at is to actually look at, with a realistic eye, hey, half pint, somebody's actually listening. Look at where what the situation really is with the team's roster, where they're really at, and what we can really assess as their needs. Now, this is just a really quick Seahawks depth chart that I created just a few minutes ago. And it only goes too deep at the most, and in some cases it doesn't even go too deep. And the reason for that is that what we're looking at here is guys that realistically are actually going to play for the Seahawks. Now, there's some other names you've never heard of, names that none of us can really evaluate, that we don't know much about, that may have been on the practice squad or they've been signed to the 90-man roster. They don't count. We're only counting the guys that we know about and that we've seen play. So what I've got here is I've got a color-coded chart for each position, and I've broken it up into a way that makes sense to me. Red being a desperate need, yellow being a need, a solid need that needs to be drafted for. Light green is kind of a maybe. Yeah, we could use maybe some improvement there. And green is a luxury pick. So let's go through and take a look at each and every one of the guys on this list, and just kind of make a fair evaluation of what's going on here. All right, let's start on the defensive side of the ball over here. Out here at right corner, we have Tariq Woolen. He's really the only guy out there. There's a couple of young players that are kind of vying for the backup spot. He's pretty solid. He was great in his rookie year when I think he made the Pro Bowl, but not so great last year. And, he's a good player, but that's a position where we could maybe use a young defensive back to come and improve that spot. Now, if we look at the free safety and strong safety situations, we've got Jenkins at strong safety, who we signed from Jacksonville. We've got Love, who we signed last year, and Wallace, who we signed this year at free safety. That's how I'm breaking them up. That's a need position because these guys, Wallace and Jenkins, are both on one-year contracts. There's no guarantee we're getting either one of them back. And they're playing for their next contract. They're not playing for their next team or for this team. They're playing for their next contract. So we have to keep that in mind. Nickelback is not a need. Witherspoon has got that handled. And actually, it's probably time for Witherspoon to be moved outside to one of these two positions on the outside and move one of these other guys, either Michael Jackson or Trey Brown, back into the nickel spot so that Witherspoon gets in on more plays. Although teams like the Seahawks play a lot more nickel than they used to. And we also don't know what Mike McDonald, the new head coach, is going to do defensively. Is he going to play a big nickel all the time? And if he does, is Witherspoon going to be it? Or is he going to go re-sign Jamal Adams, as they've talked about doing, play him at big nickel and move Witherspoon to the outside? We really don't know yet. We just know that Witherspoon is pretty much a star player, a guy who is probably the best player on our defense and will make a difference for this team as long as he stays healthy. Now we move inside to the two linebacker positions where we have Baker and Dodson, two guys we signed off free agency this year. We have nobody behind them at linebacker. And really, there's a couple names, but they're not guys that are even really NFL roster guys. So they're marginal bottom of the line, bottom line roster guys. Now, you may be wondering why you don't see Kobe Bryant in here. I guess we could plug Bryant in right there because now he's basically a failure at corner. So now he's going to move into safety. So we could probably plug Bryant in there. But still, the two linebacker spots and the two safety spots are a need for the Seahawks going forward because that's just the way, as you look at the depth chart, it's a need. Now, edge I've got as a maybe category. People keep giving us edges because Jared Verse or Dallas Turner or somebody drops to the Seahawks in their mock draft. Edge is not a need for the Seahawks. You've got Boye Mafe, who had 9 sacks last year. Granted, he had 8 the first 8 games, I think, or the first 9 games, and then won the rest of the year. So he dropped off dramatically, but he made progress. And if you guys know, if a player's going to be something, you usually see major progress in his second year. It happened with Frank Clark. It happens with a lot of players around the NFL. But he had 9 sacks last year. Darrell Taylor, his backup right now, they just re-signed him or restructured his deal. They could still cut him, but Darrell Taylor's had a season where he had 9 sacks. He was very effective. On the other edge, Uchenna Nwosu's coming back from a torn ACL. He's a 10-sack-a-year guy. Derek Hall is a guy we blew a second-round pick on last year because Pete and John thought he was a first-round talent. We saw nothing of that. Nothing. He barely got on the field in his first season. So Derek Hall is a guy who needs to make a big jump. But the reality is we have 3 guys that are 9, 10 sack a year guys on the edge. We have Derek Hall, who apparently still has some potential, or he probably wouldn't even be on the team. So edge, I don't see as a major need at all. Inside, I think we're set unless we decide to cut Draymond Green in there, or Draymond Green? Yeah, Draymond Jones at right defensive end. He's got an overpriced contract, but they haven't done anything with it yet. He's definitely in as a starter. Leonard Williams, we just signed to a long-term deal on the other side. Jaron Reed is right now the nose tackle. He's going to share that with Hankins, the new guy that we just signed. And we got Miles Adams and Mike Morris, who we drafted last year in the 5th round. So we got 6 guys on the interior defensive line that have growth potential and talent. And we just have to wait and see how they can be schemed. I think, I think they would have cut Draymond Jones a long time ago and taken the cap savings. And except that they think clearly that there's something to the guy, that he can do something in their new schemes. He complained vociferously. There was apparently a tweet that was out there from Draymond Jones complaining about how, you have no idea what I was dealing with from a coaching and scheming standpoint last year. So I may have sucked last year, but he thinks he's determined, he says, to be a lot better this year. So, I don't have a problem with these guys as starters, any of them. I like them, so I think we'll just keep them in there. As you look at the offensive side of the ball, things are not as great. On the outsides, we have Tyler Lockett and Aviska Chenault, the guy we just signed from Carolina. He's probably going to be a kick returner, but he does have, I think, a couple hundred catches in his 2 or 3 year career. So he's got some potential as a wide receiver. On the other side, we have the awesome DK Metcalf, our only other star player besides Devon Witherspoon, and Jake Bobo backing him up, who had a pretty good rookie season, you have to admit. So I think we're okay on the wide receiver. The slot receiver, We've got Jackson Smith Najigba and D. Eskridge I have in there because he's probably going to make the team as a double kick returner unless somebody comes along in camp that's a better receiver than Eskridge and can return kicks. Now we look at the offensive line. Charles Cross is going to be the left tackle. Um, Abe Lucas is going to be the right tackle unless he gets hurt. That's why it's light green here. But we have Stone Forsyth behind both tackle spots, I guess. The real problem, of course, the bigger problem is the interior offensive line center, right guard, and left guard. We've got Anthony Bradford at right guard. Didn't have a great rookie year. Not as good a rookie year as, for instance, Damian Lewis, who just signed for $54 million for the Carolina Panthers. Of course, they screwed Lewis up completely by he had a great year at right guard and they moved him to left guard where he was terrible. And then they brought in that guy from the Raiders who was a Pro Bowl left guard and put him at right guard. This is the kind of shit that Pete Carroll used to do that we're all just done with. Thank God we're done with. The center is probably going to be Oluwole Watimi. Nick Harris is going to back him up. I don't think George Fant is going to be the right tackle. I don't think he's going to be the left tackle. I don't think he's going to be a utility player. I think as of now, if we had to play today, he would be the starting left guard. He's played right guard. Sorry, he's played right tackle. He's played left tackle. He can play guard. He's played some guard. I think that's where he's going to end up right now if we had to start today. Backed up by Ankrum, who we picked up in free agency. And it's a weak spot. Now, tight end is more of a need. We got Noah Fant in there, who's got all kinds of athletic talent, but wasn't utilized in the scheme last year. Hopefully, Ryan Grubb, the new offensive coordinator, can find a way to get the tight end more involved. Pete Carroll never could. Pete Carroll viewed tight ends as light tackles, I think, like a light tank in a Panzer division or something. He just viewed them as blockers. That's why he spent $24 million on a stiff like Will Disley, who couldn't catch a run or do anything. Noah Fant has talent. We just need to get him the ball. But behind him, there's really not anything. We got Farrell Brown, who we signed, who's just a blocker. So I think tight end is someplace we could be looking at. Running back, of course, we've got K9, Kenneth Walker. We got Zach Charbonnet and McMillan, K-Mac. I think we're good at running back. We'll probably pick up another couple of guys. I don't really have I really do not have a fullback on the roster. I don't know if they're going to use a fullback or not. They might, but I just as soon use Farrell Brown, use a backup tight end when you need a fullback in the game, or use one of your backup offensive linemen. That's what I would do. Now we get to the real problem, the problem I've been talking about repeatedly, which is the quarterback situation as a giant, desperate red flag on it for a very simple reason, because of the reality that this is the biggest problem area the Seattle Seahawks have. We traded away our Hall of Fame, multiple time Super Bowl winning Pro Bowl quarterback, multiple time Pro Bowl, Super Bowl winning quarterback, and got, frankly, a bunch of average starters out of it. We really didn't get much in the way of players that are stars. Devon Witherspoon has the potential to be a star. He's not quite a star yet, but he's had some great games. Other than that, Charles Cross is an average starter. Noah Fant is an average starter. None of the defensive line guys we got are good. We got one game out of Drew Lock, one win, which is the Philadelphia game last year where he led that 89 or 83-yard drive to win the game. That's all we got out of Drew Lock. Let's be honest. We didn't get anything else out of him. Geno Smith, if you watch my other video, Geno Smith is not a unicorn, which is linked in the description below. Had a drop-off, exactly as I told you. I'm the only one in Seahawks Twitterverse that told you Geno Smith is going to have a major drop-off in 2023 compared to 2022. Nobody else wanted to tell you that. Maybe Rob, but I don't think Rob Staten really saw it the way I did, which is that journeyman quarterbacks over the age of 30 who have a career year past 30 never, ever get back to that level. They never repeat it. I told you that was historically true in the NFL, and that Geno Smith is not a unicorn. And last year he came out and proved it. He had about a 20% drop-off in every major statistical category, 25 to 30% drop-off. He actually had about a 33% drop-off in his touchdown productivity last year, touchdown pass productivity. Geno is not the answer, and this team has not addressed the quarterback position. Now, they did trade for Sam Howell, and some people might say, well, that's addressing the quarterback position. Sam Howell has led the NFL in one category last year. That category was interceptions. And if you watch his interceptions, which go to YouTube, I'll try to link that one in there as well. Uh, there's some of the worst picks you're ever going to see in your life. They're absolutely terrible. And although I like some of Howell's physical tools, the reality is he's not a good a player. Is not as good a player as Justin Fields, for instance. Justin Fields is a far superior physical talent who's been a lot more productive than Sam Howell at the NFL level, in spite of the fact that he's never had anybody really good around him. The only two decent receivers he's ever had are Cole Kmet, the tight end, and DJ Moore, the wide receiver. And last year, with Justin Fields throwing them the ball, they both put up Pro Bowl numbers. Kmet had 73 catches, I think 6 touchdowns. DJ Moore had over 100 catches, 1,300 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So when Justin Fields gets talent around him, he can produce with that talent. Um, Unfortunately, the Seahawks did not make a move to trade for him. Either that, or he was one of the teams that did inquire but was rejected. There was a story out there, and I have to give John Schneider a little bit of credit in case this is true, that a team with an established quarterback, had inquired about Justin Fields. And that sounds an awful lot like the Seattle Seahawks. So it could very well be that we did inquire, but he just didn't want to come here. Now, if that's the case, cut John Schneider a lot more slack. But we don't know that that's the case. And knowing their behavior, it's unlikely to be the case. So looking at all this, looking at the depth chart, this is the way I set things up. These are positions we have to draft high at. Quarterback is our number one need, absolutely. If there's any way they can get their hands on Michael Penix Jr., including trading next year's number one pick along with this year's number one pick to go up and get him, I'm in favor of that 100%. Failing in that, I'm willing to trade down out of 16 and get ourselves in a 24, 25, 25 to 30, 32 area. Bo Nix or Spencer Rattler. I'm okay with those guys as long as we move forward with a new young quarterback who has more upside than the aging and fading Geno Smith, who is 34. He's not getting any younger, and he sure as shit isn't getting any better. And nobody else in Seahawks Twitterverse or Seahawks blogosphere will tell you that. I am. And I'm going to be right about it, just like I was right about what was going to happen last year with Geno Smith, when they should have traded up, taken all those picks and traded up and gotten CJ Stroud. That's what we should have done, is traded for the number one pick. It could have been done. We would have had to give up 5 and 20. That means we wouldn't have had Nick Jig and we wouldn't have had Witherspoon. However, and we wouldn't have this year's 16th pick overall. However, we would have a quarterback that could take us to the Super Bowl in CJ Stroud. So quarterback's the number one need. The interior offensive line, I think, has to come next. Linebacker, safety, tight end. Those are our needs. The other green areas are wants. If somebody falls to you, if we trade down to 58 and Jared Verse is still there, go ahead and take him. I'm fine with that. And get rid of Derek Hall, move him off somewhere else. Try to get a 5th round pick for him next year or something. I'm fine with all that. I don't think that's going to happen. But these are the top needs: quarterback, interior offensive lineman, guard or center, doesn't matter, linebacker, safety, tight end. Those are the picks we have to address right away. Now, what a lot of people will tell you is that I'm crazy. Mike Bear is crazy. This guy, if you think Dan Veens, if you think quarterback is this team's number one problem, you're not watching the games. Yeah, I do, because I'm not watching a game for, can we win this game? Can we pull this game out? I'm looking at the long term. The long term to me being, when do we get to the Super Bowl? Hey, go 49ers, BJ. Yeah, that's the thing. Geno Smith has never beaten the 49ers. He's 0 for 4. Russell Wilson owned the 49ers. And that's the team we're going to have to beat if we ever expect to get back to the Super Bowl. And that's all I care about. I don't care about winning games this year. I don't care about making the playoffs this year. If we have to go to the toilet to get our quarterback that's going to carry us to the Super Bowl in 2 or 3 years, Fine with that. It's about time we did something daring and dramatic like that. So as we look at this thing, it just the situation is not great, but you still keep getting this feedback from everybody else, from Seahawks Retard Nelson and Dan Veens, Seahawks Forever, and Hawk Blogger. Oh, well, they're so excited for the Seahawks to draft position player, a guard. Oh, Troy Fatanu, man, he's awesome. He'd be great. Yeah, well, you look at the depth chart, it would help the interior offensive line. But how many football games do you think a guard, if we draft a guard at 16, how many football games do you think that guy's going to win for the Seahawks next year? I'd say one, maybe, or zero, as opposed to a quarterback like Michael Penix or Spencer Rattler. By the way, I'm also going to predict Spencer Rattler does not get past the 33rd pick, the first pick in the second round. If he lasts to that pick, the Raiders trade up and take him if they don't take a quarterback in the first round. Now, it's very problematic for Michael Penix to get to the Seahawks at 16. It's very problematic because there are so many teams in front of us that want a quarterback. However, some of them may be really dumb. They may be as dumb as John Schneider and Pete Carroll. They may be like, well, he's really, we have him on our board at 33. We can't take him at 11. Most teams ignore that. They take the quarterback when they need the quarterback because that's the only way you get one. Seahawks don't do that. There are other teams out there that are that dumb. So if there's some really dumb teams that say, well, this offensive tackle is rated way higher on our board than Michael Penix, then we'll take the offensive tackle because we really need one of those. Great, do that. If Penix falls to the Seahawks at 16, no trade outs, no nothing, take him. Fucking take him. I feel stronger about this than I felt in 2002 when the Seahawks and Mike Holmgren desperately needed a safety. And there was this guy named Ed Reed who I saw play. And I'm like, this guy's amazing. This guy has the best instincts I've ever seen. This guy makes plays all over the field. And literally, I was screaming when the Seahawks were on the clock at number 20 in 2002, Ed Reed, Ed Reed, Ed Reed. And Mike Holmgren traded out so he could take Maurice Morris, a running back, in the second round, get an extra second round pick. And he went to the Ravens at 24, and then he went to the fucking Hall of Fame. So I feel as strongly about this taking Michael Penix at 16 if he falls as I did about that. And I was right about that. So 1 for 1. And I've had other football predictions over the years. So, I'm just saying, let's see what happens. If Penix makes it to 16 and they pass on him, it'll be the biggest, stupidest mistake this team has made since they passed on Ed Reed in 2002. Or since they traded out of TJ Watt in 2017 and Cam Robinson, and then traded out of Cam Robinson and Budda Baker so they could take Malik McDowell. That was a pretty big fucking mistake, too. So there are people out there who actually think that if we take a guard or a linebacker or a safety or one of these, or an edge guy, that's somehow going to make the Seahawks contenders next year. It's not. If you look at that roster, it's got some pieces that with good coaching could maybe improve the defense from 32 to 18 or 20 or 15, which would probably win 1 or 2 games. But remember, they've been 9-8 the last 2 seasons, but there have been a bunch of games they were lucky to win. Okay. The Redskins game comes to mind where Jamal Adams did a header like John Stones for Manchester City. Boom, headed the ball up in the air. They got an interception and squeaked that game out. The Cleveland game. There were lots of games that they've been lucky. They could have just as easily been 6-11 as they were 9-8 the last 2 seasons. So the margins are very thin. The way you beat those margins is to go get star football players. Star players like a quarterback. And again, I'm fine with Bo Nix. I'm fine with Spencer Rattler as long as we take one of them first, because that is our biggest need. Now, you may say, well, that's just crazy. That's not our biggest need. I mean, we've had these great drafts, and these guys know more than you. That's the whole point of me doing this. The whole point of me doing this is not to guess what John Schneider is going to do. I think John Schneider's an idiot. So far, unless he has a master plan to get Penix or one of the other quarterbacks. If he does that, then I'll say he's not an idiot. But so far, the evidence is he's not very smart. But let's look at the Seahawks roster again. Think about it. Do you really think a position player other than quarterback is going to make a difference for this football team this year or in the next 2 or 3 years? Enough of a difference to get us to a Super Bowl? Mm, I don't think so. I don't think so. And there's a reason why I don't think so. Let's look at the 2002 draft. Okay. You see any quarterbacks on there? No. But John Schneider, he loved Sam Howell. Well, he didn't love Sam Howell enough to draft him. He could have drafted him right here at 109. Instead, he took Kobe Bryant, who's now a backup free safety who's played his way out of the cornerback position that he was drafted for and is probably the 54th man on a 53-man roster. I don't think he's going to make the team. But we'll see because John Schneider drafted him and John Schneider has roster authority, which is a huge mistake. It should always be the quarterback or it should always be the head coach. But let's look at the position players they've taken. With that big haul they got in the Russell Wilson trade. Charles Cross, not a Pro Bowler, average starter. Took him 9th overall. Boye Mafe, 9 sacks last year. 8 in the first half of the season, 1 in the second half of the season. Has potential. Kenneth Walker has potential, has star potential. Okay. Played pretty well when he's healthy. Not healthy all that often. Abraham Lucas, average starter. Okay. Injury problems. When he's healthy, very good player. Very good player. And this is a guy that really sold me on Rob Staten was Lucas because he said this guy has first-round talent. Why did he last until the 3rd round, pick number 72, where the Seahawks could get him, which, by the way, is right where he was evaluated by most of the mock draft aggregate sites? Maybe it's because of the injuries. Tariq Woolen, great rookie year, faded last year. Tyreek Smith, done nothing. Bo Melton, done nothing. Derek Young, done nothing. Still on the roster. All right, let's look at 2023 now. Let's move over to 2023 and see what the Seattle Seahawks did in the draft. Well, they took Devon Witherspoon, quarterback, star quality, star potential. Jackson Smith-Njigba played pretty well as a rookie, possible Tyler Lockett replacement, which is what he was drafted for. Derek Hall, stiff, didn't do anything in his rookie season. Really disappointing. Zach Charbonnet, solid role player. Anthony Bradford, below average starter, but he started. Cameron Young didn't do anything. Mike Morris didn't play. Olu Olubatimi has possibilities as our starting center next year. Jarek Reed didn't do anything. Kenny McIntosh never saw the field to speak of. So that's 19 position players. 19. Okay, in the last 2 years. Do you really think if the Seahawks, with their 7 or 8 draft picks, draft 7 or 8 more position players like they have the last 2 years, these kind of guys, they're going to a Super Bowl? If you do, you're nuts. If you think a fucking guard like Troy Fautanu has a better chance of putting the Seahawks in the Super Bowl in 2 years than Spencer Rattler or Bo Nix or Michael Penix, you're a fucking retard. That's not going to happen. So, as we've gone through these last 2 drafts, which the Seahawks have received so much praise for, the reality is there's only 2 star players, potentially star players in the group. 3. Let's give Walker potential starter, potential star quality, Witherspoon potential star quality, and Maffei's got some talent, but that's really it. None of the rest of these guys have star written all over them. Out of 19 picks, that's a pretty poor result out of 19 draft picks when you could have taken Sam Howell. And maybe Sam Howell is the product of bad coaching and bad talent. You would have had better coaching and better talent here, that's for sure. could have had Brock Purdy, who is a star and way better than Sam Howell or Geno Smith. You could have had Will Levis, who has star written all over him in Tennessee, just really learning the pro game, but has incredible physical traits. Passed on him 2, 3 times. And you could have traded up to the number 1 pick last year, which is what I wanted to do. Trade 3 first-round picks and go get the top overall pick and take in CJ Stroud. In which case, we wouldn't be having this discussion because the Seahawks would have their star quarterback for the future locked down. Instead, Pete and John, oh, no, Geno's good enough. Well, Geno dropped off, as I've stated, by 30% last year. And he might be as good as last year, but he's never going to get back to 2022. Never going to get back to that level, not at 34 years old. So where we sit right now is that quarterback remains this team's absolute number 1 need. It has been since March 8th, 2022, a day which will live in infamy, the day that we traded away our chance to win a Super Bowl when we traded Russell Wilson, who I think is going to have a great year this year in Pittsburgh and be the NFL's comeback player of the year and cement his Hall of Fame credentials. Well, they're already cemented. They were cemented 5 years ago. But that's the real state of the Seahawks roster. And I am the only one, the absolute only person in the Seahawks Twitterverse that's going to tell you the truth. This is really the way our roster looks right now. And if you think drafting one of these guys or one of these guys or one of these guys, as opposed to drafting a quarterback, it is going to get you to a Super Bowl, you don't know ball. You don't know ball, which is what people always say to me that don't want to believe. They don't want to face the reality. The quarterback is the biggest problem the Seahawks have had for the last 2 years, and they've so far done nothing about it. I'm going to make you face that reality. And everybody that wants to mark my tweets and, oh, I'll be back. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Let's talk. Let's talk in December, January, when the season ends. Let's see what the Seahawks do and see which one of us is right. I know how that one's going to come out. All right, that's it. Have a great Sunday. Go Hawks. Let's hope that common sense prevails and that John Schneider is really not as dumb as I think he is, and that he has a secret plan to obtain one of those 3 quarterbacks that they're likely to obtain. Here's another thing. You can get up to the 6th or 7th pick with 2 first-round picks. With 2016 and 2025's first-round pick. With number 16 and 2025's first-round pick. At least on the charts. You probably have to give up more than that in real life. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can save $25 million on next year's cap and $12 million on this year's cap by trading or cutting Geno after that. Does anybody want Geno? Maybe not, but you can trade him for a 6-pack. Somebody will take him off your hands if you offer to pay his salary for this year to get the cap savings. It'll happen. All right, that's it. At me. Prove me wrong. Let's wait and see what happens. Let's hope that John Schneider has a secret plan to draft a quarterback, which I've already speculated about. Talk to you later.